The gods have chosen you to rule over the sacred lands under the gaze of Mount Olympus. You have become a true hero, the ruler of the Aegean.
Welcome everyone, Costin here with a discussion about the Royal Court in Total War Pharaoh Dynasties. In this particular case, I'm going to use the Aegean Court, partly because I fought a very long civil war that took 20 turns to actually conclude over here, and partly because I'm sure some people would be interested in this particular situation. Certainly the Trojan War was fought, though Troy was knocked out pretty quickly. It came down to a war between Lycia, Knossos, Agamemnon, all kinds of things. I got on one side Achilles and his buddies, his many friends over here. Like, I have a decent number of vassals, I have a decent number of military allies as well. It certainly has been a lot more interesting than you might think. Like, I'm actually appreciating the fact, like, you look at what Agamemnon is doing over here. Kurunta declared war on us, and it's like Agamemnon is just like, yeah, Achilles, you deal with other things. I've got you covered, bro. And he's just like going on a crusade over here. It's freaking awesome in so many ways. But anyway, let's talk about the power of the crown. What do you get and how to use it? Well, one of the first things you'll actually get is an extra court position. So you can get just one court position until you become Wanax or Pharaoh or what have you. And once you do become Wanax, you can also get a second court position. Now, not all court positions are worth it. In this case, having army spraying influence can be particularly useful, especially as you're conquering various bits of territory. The general positions, the heketas, as they were in this one, or high commander or what have you, may not necessarily be worth it, because you can gain these troops through just regard, for regular regard. So that isn't necessarily too big of a problem. And when you're looking at the priest position or the construction position, those could be worth it. Not the generals, because again, you can get those troops regardless. And if you're sitting there as Wanax, you'll certainly get those troops anyway. So just keep that in mind. Now, this is important because of the royal powers that you will have access to in the Regalia. So for anyone that's a pretender, you will get one item. Then you will usually have several items dependent on certain settlements. In the Aegean, it works like this. Any pretender or Wanax gets the Hephaestion shield. This is basically Achilles' shield or Aeneas' shield from the lore. Really, it can be one or the other. This shield gives you replenishment, fear, and encourage for your bodyguards. Then you have Athena's Aegis. When you become Wanax, or you're the sitting Wanax, like Priam, if you play his campaign, you get diplomatic relations with Aegean factions and the evaluation for all diplomatic agreements except barters. Only available to sitting Wanax. And then you have Ares' Aspis if you're a pretender or Wanax, but you need to control Mycenae. Then you have the royal powers. Now, this shield, by the way, you can only equip one of them on your faction leader, whoever that is, or whoever is trying to be the pretender. In this case, I've been using the Hephaestion shield. I'm probably going to switch to Athena's shield over here. And, well, I might want to switch to a club or an axe over here if I can. Could use some heavy armor, by the way, but unfortunately I don't actually have that. Regardless of that, you then have royal powers. The royal powers are the same, they're just improved at higher tiers. It does take up to 400 legitimacy to do so, but because of the changes to legitimacy, it is very easy. You just find a bunch of battles in a campaign, and you'll probably will be able to get it by the time a civil war is over. Now, a lot of factions will join the Civil War and prolong it unless you impose some kind of limitation early on. You may wish to do so because some factions are just there prolonging the Civil War for no bloody good reason, making things annoying. I also find that legitimacy support is a bit bugged because, well, let me just give you an idea. Let's say I ask for legitimacy support from him. Okay, if it's like 2, it will be a regular deal. But if I go over here to 110, he'll give me everything I need. So that is bugged. I am using campaign customization deal evaluation benefit, but that's only 20. So something is clearly bugged with asking for legitimacy from factions, at least if you're asking for a lot. Anyway, so what do these powers give you? Well, it depends on the area you're in. There are some things that are shared, like things like forced annexation, court presence. Those are going to be in every area, but then there's some unique aspects. So you get court presence. This can help you fill up court positions. It can be 5 out of 5, but you don't necessarily need all 5. So I would not necessarily get this at tier 4. You get 2 tier 1 powers, 1 tier 2 power, 1 tier 3, and 1 tier 4. I would not put this at the tier 4 power. Maybe the tier 3, maybe, or the tier 2, depending on how many core positions you actually care about. Forced annexation, what this can do is it can help you take take control of a faction with up to 3 regions. Now, here's the problem with this. Let's say I activate this power as my tier 4 power. Okay. And then I go to Odysseus. By the way, Odysseus is... Where is Odysseus, by the way? Like, that is really the question. I have no idea, actually. Okay, so he's there, right? Well, I can use this power and gain that, but it's destroying Ithaca. And that is not really great. By the way, I have a bunch of issues with trust over here. There's a reason I use deal evaluation. But what you may notice is I don't have Odysseus anymore. So he's been wiped out. That is a bit ridiculous and kind of defeats the freaking purpose if you're not even going to gain those generals in your faction. You gain their territory. It is useful against minor factions, but don't use it with major factions because you're actually going to end up at a loss. It's better to just regularly confederate these factions, at least based on what I'm seeing over here. So yeah, that is not especially great over there in that respect with that particular power. Okay, what about other powers? Well, core presence gives you a certain number of core positions. I would say going higher than tier 2 is not necessarily too useful over here with the core presence. Now, what's nice is that once you become Wanax, it's like you can just be like throw them the hell out of the court, right? And you can get free positions, but keep in mind you are always going to be at Wanax, so it's free position out of the 5 over here that are available. So that's particularly useful to know with respect to this. Power. So you can always throw people out of the court. It does cost you an action, a court action, and it does cost you gold to do so. But if you want to, say, you're playing Prime, you want to throw Agamemnon out of the court, go ahead and put your own loyalist in there. By the way, with respect to choosing a power, once you've chosen power, you can't change it unless you're getting it at higher tier. So if I wanted core presence free, over here at tier 3 as opposed to tier 4, I would just upgrade it, but I couldn't change it there. And the slot would only be open there. Then you have war games. War games give you unit ranks every couple of turns. The higher tier, the more unit ranks. It can be 4 ranks, for instance. Now, unit ranks can be useful. They do help in auto-resolve as far as I'm aware. But they actually aren't quite as useful in battle. So I would not necessarily prioritize it. What I would prioritize is competency. Because competency, this can give you competency points to spend on any character every cooldown. So that can be especially useful to level up certain people in your campaign, to just get them to a higher level, make them more useful. Like, you know, over here, just level them up. You get a cooldown. You use it. You use it again and again and again, right? Pretty simple, pretty understandable. Then you have, as I said, you have the war games. I put this as tier 1. And then finally you have remote colonization. You could genuinely just go with core presence as a tier 1 ability, as opposed to tier 2 or tier 3, tier 4, and instead get remote colonization as a higher tier ability. It is based on distance, but sometimes the AI will burn settlements to the ground, undeniably so. Other times they won't do anything, right? Like there's many situations, like, so it's very, very situational what that particular ability is. In effect, the same ability that Menelaus used to have in Troy, because that was one of his faction effects. He had global recruitment for, and combined with recruitment from allies or vassals, but you also had remote colonization for cost. Now you can really reduce the cost and increase the distance at which you can do this, and there is of course a cooldown to these things. Those are the abilities. Is it worth becoming Wanax? Absolutely. Not necessarily for the power is over there, but the court positions, or the supreme ruler as it's called, very, very much so. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. The powers themselves, I'll be honest, they kind of feel like gimmicks, really. Like, you can use forced annexation, sure. That can be useful, right? And you can even use it on factions that you might not be able to, generally speaking, annex, I think. Not entirely sure about that, but it can be done even on factions that you can regularly confederate. That's the real value over there. So it is useful in that context. It's not great to do it to factions that you could confederate in a regular fashion, so just keep in mind regular confederation is still gonna be very much worth it. Same with vassalization. In fact, vassalizing factions, keeping a lot of vassal factions alive, might be very useful, despite the fact that there's gonna be a bunch of wars that are gonna happen in a campaign that you may not be able to control. Military allies can be incredibly finicky. You know, playing this game, I'm just thinking to myself, you know, we always, like, especially because of the movie Troy, we think, like, Achilles is the hero, but really, I'm feeling for Agamemnon, because it's like herding cats. It works. You can make it work, unlike many other cases in Total War, but geez, it can be frustrating at times. Like, oh, hey, Lycia, let's get a peace treaty. Okay, and then it's like... oh, Ajax is just gonna be like, oh, I want to wipe out Lycia, so how about you join the war, you're gonna lose your military alliance.
I will hear.
Well, hell, that's fun. Not really, but all the same. So yeah, there's obviously some problems with it, to be sure, but I mean, this is nice, right? Building up this empire. It certainly feels more worthwhile than other things I've done in Total War, because I don't actually hold a lot of territory here. Not necessarily. It's more so like, you know, we've got this massive alliance of people just playing around the campaign map. Diomedes, Ajax, Agamemnon. I think Menelaus died at a certain point. Don't really know where, or I don't really know where he is. He might be there somewhere. I have no clue on that, but I haven't seen him for a while, so I think he did die at one point. Anyway, that is all I had to say. Costin signing out, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. Stay tuned for more.